Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Sorry. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us from. We're here today, excited about our two special guests in the house, Alison and Femi, and also we're celebrating the graduation of our Textilers Tech Deep Dive Cohort 4. So we just saying thank you to a couple of people who made this possible. As we start off, I'd like to highlight Yinka and Victoria. They went through everything, got the team channels created, the onboarding of everyone. So a big shout out. Please let's give them some love. Thank you so much for all of the support that you gave us to make this cohort successful. Right. So our ground rules, we'll be recording this session. So please, if you would not like to be recorded, you may drop off now, but we hope that nobody goes off the call. Mute your mic if you're not speaking. And then if you want to ask any questions, we would like you to wait till the end. But if you think you may forget, you can drop it in the chat box as we go along. And then we encourage you to follow our social media handles. We have our LinkedIn, our Twitter, Instagram. We're also on Discord. You can join us there. And then we have our YouTube channel where all of our amazing sessions have been recorded and uploaded. So we hope you join us there and also subscribe to our session. So for those of us that are joining us for the first time, you may wonder what's Textilers about? Well, Textilers is basically a community to support women in technology. We pride ourselves in our superpower, which is our knowledge of technology, and we use our knowledge to help make the world a better place and also help support each other as we grow along in our journey. So we have women of various levels. You can see Alison, amazing years, in the tech industry. And then we also have those that are starting out. So we just help each other along the way and make ourselves successful in our journey. So that's really our vision. And we're also an inclusive community. So when we started out, we're all girls, all girls. But then the guy said, "Oh, but we want to come." So we said, "Okay, you can come along. Hope if you don't mind being in a class full of girls, then you can join us." So we have some of the guys join us for some of our sessions, which has been fantastic. All right, I think MJ.
Yes, well said for you. Thank you so much. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh,
Thank you.
fantastic. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Olajumoke Toriola, MJ for short, but not Michael Jackson, like I used to tell people. Because if you ask me to take any step, I will disappoint you. So MJ for short, but not Michael Jackson. For this session, this course has been a very fantastic one. For this season, actually, we have great turnouts of participants, and more so, it's been a lot of fun, lots of learning, lots of networking. And then even when you made mention of it, yes, our men, they decided to wear virtual skirts, so they joined us, and it was quite very interesting, the turnout of what we see. So an overview of what the Tech Deep Dive is all about. I'll just start by letting us know that in Textiler, if this is your first time of coming in Textiler, what we do is that we have this we said we want to change lives through technology. When Foyin was saying the other time that we're women of superpower, I wanted to say not those ones that fly on stick, actually, but we are actually women of superpower, and we use technology to change the lives of everyone around us. And so regarding the tech deep dive is actually where we come with women with very skilled in the technology space, and then they come in to take our participants or our candidates, so to say, in a series of technologies, of Microsoft technologies, and not limited to Microsoft technologies, because we also have another one that is outside Microsoft, which is the UI in the US angle. And for this Tech Deep Dive Cohort 4, this is our 4th edition, really. The amazing part of it is that we have 11 participants, 12 tech mentors, and then we have these 5 tracks: Microsoft 365, Azure, Power Platform, Power BI, and then UI UX. It has been an amazing journey of 8 weeks. I mean, and then we've seen a lot of dedication from the tech mentors, from and even the students. We've seen a lot of dedication from them, and we cannot go by without saying a very big thank you to these tech mentors, because all of this wouldn't have been possible without you. So we just want to say a shout out to you. Thank you, every single one of you, for the time, for the dedication, for giving out your all into all of these, because a lot of the feedbacks we're getting, it actually showed that you guys did fantastically well, and then you did a very good job in ensuring that the knowledge was passed to all of our participants. So we just want to say a big thank you to you. We know it is very stressful, considering a lot of us have our work schedule to cater for, our family, the family to also take care of. But then we decided to do all of this. We just want to appreciate you. Thank you so much to every one of you. And then, so without wasting much of our time, we would like to go into the program of today. As you all know, if this is your first time again, I want to reiterate our cohorts. We normally have our cohorts sometimes once in a year. Perhaps, probably, maybe if we look at it again, if time permits, we may decide to have another one before the year runs out. But definitely once in a year we have that. However, our inspirational session, we normally have that every end of the month. Inspirational session is where we bring people like Alison and Oluwafemi to come give us from their own wealth of knowledge. And then after all of this the tech deep dive session, what more is for us to learn how we can actually go into the market and then do what? Survive, how we can survive in the industry, and learn all of those tips and tricks that we can be better in the industry. So to meet our special guest speaker today, I'll be introducing our very first speaker, who is Oluwafemi Michael Iyidero. The first time I saw the name, I was particularly interested in actually looking at his profile. And then when I went to LinkedIn and I looked at the profile, one captivating part of it was a tech recruiter. And it came to my mind, what is this all about? I'm interested, and at the same time, I'm looking forward to what you have for us. So a little bit of background about Oluwafemi. Oluwafemi Michael Yidero is a senior human capital business partner and a tech recruiter at Sterling Bank PLC, with an academic and professional profile that combines insight from core science, business administration, technology, educational technology, and organizational development. Femi is set to nourish expertise in human resources development, both as an academic and as a consultant. And how he does this wonder is by testing theories and framework that focus on issues that relate to growth and positive outcomes for employees, organization, communities, and country. I'm particularly very interested in this because to have a subject matter expert in the field coming to give us from his wealth of knowledge. I'm looking forward to Femi's session. I want to learn as much as possible. I have my pen already down because I want to start getting all of those tips and tricks for myself, even though I've been in the industry for over 18 years. Well, please help make me welcome Oluwafemi Makeidoro. Once again, the floor is yours. Thank you for volunteering to speak to us in Textiler. Over to you, Femi.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please confirm you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Please confirm you can hear me, please.
Yes,
Thank you
I
so much
can.
for this. Thank you for putting this together. I'm grateful. And thank you for has been a very great person. I mean, a great inspiration in my career as well. So she calls my favorite person. I call her my favorite person as well. So, and the family, you know, great inspiration. Thank you so much, Alison. It's great to share the platform with you. Profiles are greatly impressed, and I'm so 25 minutes. So what it sounds like. Uh, I'd like to screen so you could see. Can I share my screen, or should I send my slides? Or can I speak off and hello? Can I share my screen?
No, absolutely. Please, you can share your screen. You can just take it over from here, please.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey, uh, writing an excellent CV. Please confirm you can see my screen. Okay. Um, so writing an excellent CV. Coming to text, you have to learn, proving it to recruiters to show that you're worth. Of course, you have the potential and the skills to excel in these roles. I'm saying a few tricks here and there, and those things you need to know about writing your CVs, and you need to pay attention to. At the end of my session, I'd like to then freestyle a bit and tell you things I've noticed in the industry and what I think could identify you and make you unique in your own right. So, here goes. The first is when you're writing your CV. So I'll come up with the thoughts at first, and then I'll go into discussing the CVs as well. So when you're writing your CV, the first thing is you need to emphasize skills and projects you've worked on. So I know you've been in this
Okay.
training for a
Yeah.
while. You've done some projects, you've done some assignments. You need to highlight your technical skills and knowledge that aligns with the requirement of the entry level tech position you're applying for. For example, you have to apply for a passport. Say yes. Please confirm you can hear me. Hello. Okay. All right. So you need to emphasize your technical skills and knowledge. So the first, okay, Olayinka, your hand is up. You want to say something?
Yes, Femi. Please, it appears that your audio is breaking off. So maybe you
It's
should put
breaking.
off your
Okay.
video. So maybe you should put off your
Okay, that
video.
works then. Okay, does it work now? Is it clearer now?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, thank you so much. Apologies for that, please. All right, so thanks for it. So you need to highlight your technical skills. The first is when a recruiter is checking out your CV, the first thing he or she wants to know is what skill do you have? What what skill are you trying to show us that, and how are they relevant to what I'm searching for? So, for example, if I'm looking for a C# developer, those are the first few keywords I would want to see on that CV itself. So you need to highlight your technical skills. Let it come first on your profile, because this is like an entry level into the tech space and you probably do not have a lot of experience at the moment. So what you need to sell more and emphasize more are the relevant skills to the position you're applying for. I'll get to a place where I need to discuss customizing your application to each open roles you want to apply to. Now, the next thing is, and your knowledge in that space as well. So you need to really display it on your CV, and I move to the next one, which is, showcase your personal projects and contribution. Include personal coding projects that you've worked on. You might want to include your portfolio link or open source contributions link that you've worked on so far. Another initiative that demonstrates passion, technology, and willingness. I'll get to a point where I discuss volunteering and the likes, but demonstrates that you've contributed to this industry or you've contributed to the tech ecosystem, and you've done some personal projects that could, make you qualify for these roles. And of course, you need to show your willingness to learn independently. So aside from one or two skills that is quite relevant to the role, would like to see other relevant skills that you possess as well. Then describe the project and technology you used. So for example, you're discussing a particular, you want to highlight a particular project you worked on. It'd be nice to just have like few sentences, perhaps like 2 lines that describes that project. And how to do that is you describe the what, which is the entire project in that same sentence, the who, and of course the why. So what problem are you really trying to solve at that time? And what were you trying to solve that problem for? And what was the project entirely? Ensure that your statement in emphasizing or discussing this project on your CV, ensure it captures those 3 questions. Now, when it comes to the technology you use, then the how then comes to play. On that same, ensure you just limit that to a line or 2 lines on your CV, just to explain each project you worked on. That way, the recruiter is already saying, oh, I think I could, make use of this great experience and find meaning into it for this open vacancy. And of course, describe the project and technology used. I've mentioned that earlier, and of course, the impact of it. So if you want to go a step further, you could then, if the project had gone live, and you want to go a step further, you could then discuss maybe a bit of success about the project, customers in the first 30 days, then acquired this number of traffic in the first 50 days. All of those things then begins to speak to me as a recruiter, and I'm more interested in interviewing you or in meeting with you. The next point is I like your education and coursework. So, I kind of emphasize mentioning your you've worked on, but as well in terms of education, for some of you that study computer science, I studied physics, for example. So you need to look at how does this project relate to cancer at the moment. For someone that studied computer science, education, those questions, the what, the whys, and just a brief description on that. That would make us see some research skills that you currently possess, because it's so possible you don't have all the skills needed for this role to excel in this role now. But we want to see that your willingness to learn and your willingness to grow more in research. Then, of course, include capstone projects, group assignments, and showcase your ability to work in teams and solve technical challenges. It's really nice for you to then mention, the number of the team size, and your contribution in that to that team. That way, I know that you could work in a team to achieve success within a given period of or a given duration of that project. Then includes training in country or the world I come from, which is Nigeria. We're big on certifications as well. So if you it's time for you to, blow that on of this done so far. Microsoft has a lot, with some of them that you could then getting badges. Training programs attended, and the ones you've completed are relevant to this position. They mention the date, and it would brings credibility to your certification. The more credible the organization, the better it is for a recruiter to then be attracted to your CV itself, and then the dates. So we know how how long you've been learning this so far, So I share with you an example. I was recruiting for a particular role, quite senior role, and I discovered that this person hadn't gone for a training in the past 2 years, and that came up as a question because you're supposed to be developing yourself year in year. You're supposed to have like a learning target year in, year out. So the date is very important to show that you're given to continuous learning and personal development as well. And then if there are other notable details that you could add to it, it will then make a lot of meaning on your CV. Then this is another interesting part that I like personally, right? Which is volunteer work and extracurricular activities. So if you would ever been part of, for example, there's a speaking engagement I'm part of as well. I could insert that on my CV. If you've ever likely been part of, volunteer to be part of a technical projects, and you're just volunteering there for free, you could then impute that as well. So then I like your leadership roles, on your CV. It's very important, both technical and leadership, then the teamwork aspect of things that you've gained so far in your experience. It would really, really interest recruiters to know that you're given to continuous learning and you like volunteering as well. Volunteering does not even just have to stay in technical aspect of things. I would say volunteering in, corporate social responsibilities, or volunteering as an individual to a certain cause you believe in as well. You need to insert that on your CV, because organizations at every point need to know that this candidate aligns with their values as well. Same way you are trying to figure out if good for the organization as well is trying to think through the decision. Is this person uh, really someone that is giving to our core values itself? But I'll get to how you need to align the core value and how to research some of these organizations, right? Then next, which is another interesting part, customize each application. Customize each application. So read every job description to understand what they really want. Read the job descriptions to understand what the organization really wants. Every recruiter or every person writing a job description, or line manager that's written it, at some point had someone in mind and they were just looking for that person. So you now need to align your skills, your relevant projects to begin to align with the organizations that you already, you've researched them and you think that, your values align. So you now need to start aligning your skills, your projects to those relevant positions as you go. You need to look at your experience. Does it match this? So, for example, some people would ask me, Femi, do I need to insert my age on TV? I'd say yes, and I would say no. Why I wouldn't give a definite answer is, be honest, I would suggest you remove. If you must add it, ensure to read job description. So say, for example, but say is organizing bias in some country, right? So in a country like Nigeria, where I come from, you see some CV, some JDs that would tell you they need someone that is less than 26. For such JDs, please insert your date of birth. It's very important. For all that, you don't necessarily have to do that. And of course, your sex as well too. For others, you don't necessarily have to do that. But but when you begin to see, we should balance in organizations, like colleagues, and you begin to see that imbalance. For me, I look out for that. I want to know if you're female. That way, it's easier for me to then give that person, more chance than, the male counterpart. Not because the male counterparts aren't good, but maybe at that moment, what I'm sourcing for is a lady that could actually do that at this point. So that could help. Then reset the organization, reset that company. Um, you know, I oftentimes will tell um, candidates that, there is always tagline that organizations want to hear. For example, there's an organization here in Nigeria that when you tell them that I know your company is very innovative, so that's what that's what the DNA wants to look like at every point in time. And of course, there are other companies as well to outside Nigeria as well. So that is particular tagline that is is that resonates with them at every point in time. So you need to really understand the value that that organization gives you. I was just searching an organization I want to mention now. Um, in the States, and they're really big on CSR. I noticed that most of their CSR is tailored to innovative solutions around India, for example. Imagine coming to an interview and you've researched me that much, and then you tell me such, and you tell me what you're interested in about that. One way or the other, I feel like this is not the regular candidate. So research focus on clarity, fashion most times, but clarity of your CV and how people are able to read it. Ensure to, use headings properly. Be consistent with your headings, bullet points must be in place. Be concise your sentences, and then make your CV easy to read. Think of your CV as a story that you could talk through at every point, from the heading down to the of it. Think of a CV that way at every point, and then use a professional and clean layout and choose fonts that easy to read. Choose that font that is easy to read. Be on a break and at the same time just skimming through the CV at the same time. So of course make it professional and clean enough. So I'd break this down a bit. Then proofread and edit your CV. Of course, we know of a few AI softwares now that help you review your CV. You need to as well, give the human professionals around you, people that had, been in this field to read your CVs, check your spellings, grammatical errors, eliminate all of those things. Because the interesting thing about grammatical error is that it just jumps at you at every page. Every page just jumps at you, and some organizations do not appreciate that. So you need to really thoroughly proofread it, read it to understand your CV itself. Then edit for clarity and coherence. Ensure that it's logically in order at every point. I'd advise you, do not use ambiguous words, big words, complex English. Ensure that most of those words are easy to understand. And at some point when you're using abbreviation, you could put it in brackets, the meaning of that, because it could mean this to you in your country. It may mean something else in another country. Highlight your skills, project, and experience. I've explained this earlier. Then my general tips, because of my time. So I just go through this fast. I have like three of them, three slides like this. Keep your CV concise. Ideally within 2 pages. Ensure it can fit into 2 pages, 1 to 2 pages actually. Use a consistent format and font throughout your CV. Do not try to make your name with a different font, and then the body of the CV a different form, every title a different form. It looks nice if you're a visual designer, but you're not likely. If you are, maybe it will look nice, but you're not actually. I would strongly advise, now this is my recommendation and a suggestion, you don't have to. I would strongly advise you use a lighter background. Do not use dark background. I wouldn't advise that at every point. You never could tell who is going to read your CV. And you can't be wrong using that white background. It just appeals to everybody easily, right? And save your CV as PDF all the time, except for when they are requesting for a Word document. Save it as PDF because it helps you maintain your formatting across different devices and softwares. It helps you maintain that consistent look that you've desired for it to look at the beginning. Then remember your CV is your first impression. So ensure it highlights your technical expertise, accomplishments, potentials, as tech talents. And Stick to commonly used and professional fonts like Arial, Calibri, Times New Roman, and Verdana. Those are the ones I would suggest, but you could check your archives. Like, for example, I made this presentation with Century Gothic. You could fancy that as well too. It's a good font. Fonts are widely accepted and they're easy to read on printed and digital format. Then maintain like 10 to 12 points. I would recommend more of 11, between 10 to 12, which is like 11. So it's legible enough for anybody to read. And then your size balance, that, you balance it so well that it's enough content on the page. Enough content on that page. Not like, when they're printing it, it's printing out of the guide. Ensure that it's centralized properly. When you're writing things on bullet points is justified properly, and the ones that like title, for example, if you want it to be at the center, ensure that all titles are at the center. If you want it to be at the left, ensure that all titles are at the left. I wouldn't recommend you putting the title at the right hand side, because it's maybe difficult to read that, except you're sending it to maybe the Middle East, where they read from right to left and not left to right. Most countries read from left to right. But if you're sending to the Middle East, then it's advisable you write from right to the left, because that's how they read over there. But some people, are used to this. Some recruiters that, are in the APAC or EMEA regions are already used to, the global talent that we have. Again, I would advise that you arrange your CV in chronological. I mean, your most recent experience should be at the top, to your former experience at bottom. So you start from the top to the bottom. So if you're new in this field, you likely do not have a lot of experience. So start with your skills and then your experience. But when you see that on the job description, they're looking for a particular candidate with certain education, then you start from likely your accomplishment, then your education, your skills, and then your experience, depending on what the job description is saying, right? And then you look into slightly larger font like 14 to 15 for sections headings to make them stand out. To be on the safe side, you could use 15, you could use 14, you could use 16, depending on what works for you per time, right? Then throughout your CV, I can't emphasize that use same font size, same font style as well too, all through the sections. It's fashionable when it's looking so. A quick sneak peek about some of my part of my career. I'm a very good visual designer. I'm trained on that. I've done quite, a few things. I do quite a few things designing, right? And so at some point, you're tempted to use some font that is entirely different so that it could look, and the likes. But please don't be tempted in your CV on that. Remember, that is the only thing that represents you in the room where you're not. So you have to be careful, maintain that consistency, right? Then use bold or italics to highlight specific points when you want to, or when you need to. Information such as headings, job titles, and company names as well too. You just use that, discretionary. Then avoid excessive use of capitalization or underlining. So interesting, right? Capitalization, sometimes when people say it, it feels to them as though you're shouting. I've seen quite interesting CVs where people will then write everything in capital letter. Some people feel like you're shouting, which I don't mind. So use that, discretionary. Ensure to then and underlining as well too. So ensure you have fear of it. Because sometimes when you're underlining, you're simply telling the person reviewing your CV that these are the important parts alone, right? Quickly go check this if you wouldn't check any other thing. And it works when you're writing memo or you're writing a cover letter or you're writing letter. And that reminds me as well. For every description and every sexual, the cover letter that fits for the role. So, what I would advise any talent to do when it comes to cover letter is when you're sending it, you start by highlighting why you are the best candidate for this role, your unique skills, your experience so far, your educational qualification. But before before I should continue, I should going up on that narration, right? You then look at what is peculiar to that organization, like their vision, what they really want to achieve, what with your own core values and things you believe in. So take, for example, you're giving to volunteering, and that's what you like about that organization. So as you're discussing yourself, you then put them into that conversation. So on your website, I discovered you have interest in this and this, which aligns with my core value or which aligns with my interest, because I like to volunteer in this and this and this. Last summer, I did this, right? That way, you're showing me that you're that best fit for my own organization, right? So the cover letter works. It does work. People read it, right? Then the last one is okay. I said avoid capitalization and underlining as they make the text harder to read. Please avoid it when you can. All right. On this note, I'll give some space for questions. I hope I'm able to use my time wisely here. I hope I didn't shoot past the 25 minutes. So I'm giving space for questions, and thank you so much for having me here. My name is Oluwafemi Eidero.
Thank you so much, Femi. I personally enjoyed it. If you look at the chat window, like I told you, I was going to have my pen busy and then I have my hands busy really because I was just waiting to take all of the tips that you're giving us. Thank you so much. I mean, I've learned a lot. I like the fact that one particular one that I like that you emphasize more on the part of the capitalization. I sometimes have the opportunities most times to also to also review CV, and then you see a lot of different formatting. You see, and
Yeah.
then and I like the word that you use that there is nobody in the room for you. Your CV is actually the representation of yourself there in that room, and
Exactly.
then as the people are looking at it, you're already creating impression for them. So thank you so
Yeah.
much. I mean, it's resonates home to me a lot what you're saying. So at this point, I don't know whether we want to take questions after everything, but I don't know whether Femi will be able to wait or we should just take questions now. I think Femi is having a bit of. Do we have anyone with any question or? Okay. I think Femi is having a little bit of issue with her device. Any question from anywhere or any contribution before she gets to call the next speaker? Okay, all right. I guess all right. Thanks, Sonia. I think we'll take question at the end. Femi would love to have you here with us till the end if you can. Please, because we just want to manage the time as much as possible so that we can go to the next speaker. Yes. So I'm going to try to share my screen once again while we introduce our next speaker.
Hello, MJ, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, fantastic. Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Femi, for the insights shared. So we'll take all of the questions at the end. We want our questions to be as open as possible. So we'll stop the recording and then everyone on the call can feel comfortable to ask their questions the way they would like to ask it. So that's our approach tonight. So Alison, thank you so much for joining us. We had decided to have a mix of speakers. So we have Femi, who's well experienced and vast. in Nigeria, and you can have a feel of that if you're based in Nigeria. We also have Alison, who's based from the UK, and she's very well experienced in the UK and also supports a lot of our community members across other countries. So she's an MVP in BizApps, and I was privileged to meet her at the summit in Redmond. I gave her a big hug because like we've been wanting to meet each other for a very long time. So that was a good experience. So she's currently the CEO at Maximum IT. Okay, she's sorry, I'm mixing it up. She's and partner, yes, she's a partner director at Pro Proximo 3. I hope that's right. Okay, great.
Yes, correct.
And
Yes.
okay, great. And before then, she was a CEO at Maximum IT, where she spent over a decade and was responsible for various activities. You can follow Alice. I'm going to drop her handles on the chat. And she's also a subject matter expert and a strong advocate for Microsoft technologies. She's very vast in Dynamics 365 and also the Power Platform. And she's also a fantastic speaker. She speaks in conferences, both global conferences and local meetups. She's very active in the community. And then she's also a strong advocate for women in technology. And she is an outstanding career advisor who has helped organizations to identify and recruit and also retain talent with the right skill sets that would help the organization move forward. So she's she's a well experienced recruiter, and she would give us some great tips about nailing IT interviews. So we hear Alison, what are the things that we don't do as IT people that we should be doing, and what are the things that we do that we shouldn't be doing at our tech interviews? So over to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Alison.
Thank you. That was the best introduction I think I've ever had. And I feel like you now need to come and be introducing me everywhere that I'm going to speak. You made me sound amazing. So hopefully I can I can live up to the wonderful introduction. Let me just share my screen. Bear with me for 2 seconds. And I should do this on presentation mode. And hopefully you can see. Oh, hang on. Which screen can you see? It's the wrong one. Awesome. You can always trust a tech person to absolutely share the wrong screen. Fantastic. Bear with me 2 seconds. Not like I know what I'm
No
doing here
pressure.
or anything. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to, there we go. 2 seconds. I do know what I'm doing, honest. I promise. Right, if I share this now, hopefully you can see the right screen, just interview skills.
Yes, looks good.
Awesome. Great. I managed it. So I'm just going to whiz through this. I'm just going to start my timer because I will otherwise run over. I know what I'm like. I tend to talk a lot. Good evening and welcome, or good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is where you are. Thank you so much to Foyen and the team at TechStylers for having me here. I'm absolutely delighted to join you and talk a little bit about interview skills. And I've put a couple of other slides in that are not just interview skills. A little bit of background about me. I don't think I really need to say it now. Foyen said way better than I could. I've got 25 years experience in recruiting into the tech sector. I've changed my hair color. Sorry, I should have warned everybody about, or I should have changed my picture. I've got 25 years experience recruiting into the tech sector for large and small companies all around the globe. And since 2018, I've been specializing in recruiting for Power Platform and D365. And also I'm a D365 and Power Platform user and a Power Addict and Business Applications MVP, as Foyen said. I just want you to think about this as we go into what we're about to talk about. There is a massive world of endless opportunity out there, and it's important that you are the protagonist of your own life and you write the story yourself. You must drive things forward in your own direction so that you can learn and grow and progress and obviously earn money. That's what we want to do. At the end of the day, your career is your responsibility. As a technical recruiter, I have lost count of the amount of times people have said, oh, my company doesn't have a career development plan, or they're not helping me move my career forward. Honestly, it's less important to them than it is to you. If you're in your job and doing a good job, why would they want to move you on? I know that companies do have like a responsibility to help you develop, so insofar as it benefits their organization. But really, I want you to give some thought as you start this journey into your tech career about where you want to go. And it doesn't, this is not like having a baby. You can make a plan. You don't have to like take care of it for the next 20 years. Like you can change. Like if you change your mind or change your direction in a couple of years, that's fine. But like just have a plan, even if that plan is only for the next 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. Like where are you now and where do you want to be? Because it helps you to be able to spot opportunities as they arise. And there's a thing called, I forget what it's called. I was going to say confirmation bias, but it's not that. There's a particular psychological thing that your brain does where if it is aware of something, it will spot that thing. So like if I say to you now, look out, like there's white Teslas everywhere. When you go out on the street, you might go, no, there isn't. But now that I've said it, everywhere you go, you're going to see white Teslas, right? And it's the same with the skills and experiences that you need to pick up, or the jobs that you should look for as your next step. If you have an awareness in your mind of what that should be, then your brain will start pulling out all of the little opportunities that float around you all the time, because most of the time your brain goes, that's not important. I don't need to worry about that right now. So just give some thought to your career as a whole and where you want to take it. So the things that we're going to cover in this 25-minute session, and I will do my best to keep it to 25 minutes. We're going to talk briefly about mindset. Then we're going to look at some JEDI interview preparation, the interview itself, interview questions to ask, and negotiating a salary, because I think it's an important part. And I specifically want to discuss mindset and negotiating in reference to women. I don't know if we are all ladies on the call or not, apart from Femi. I'm sorry, Femi. I didn't mean to leave you out.
It's
But
okay,
it's
listen. I'm good.
sorry. It's just that the mindset and the negotiation part are very different for women than they are for men. Like it shouldn't be like that. And I'm sad that it's like that, but it just is. We go into these things with a different mindset. So this is very much geared towards women in technology. So what we want to have a think about in terms of mindset is particularly if you're new to a career in technology, and especially if you are a woman working in technology and you are starting out your journey, or maybe this is you're in a job now and you're going to be hunting for a new position. Women are less likely to apply for roles, particularly roles in technology, unless they tick off at least 80% of what's listed on the job advert or job specification. This is not, I'm not trying to be divisive in this comment, but men will apply for a position if they think they meet the title and maybe the top one requirement or top one or two requirements. And women have a tendency to look for the reasons in that job advert why they are not suited for the job. And I want you to try and silence that voice inside your head as much as possible, because realistically, looking at a job in terms of a job title, particularly in the arena that we work in, it's a reasonable assumption that if you are expecting, or if you're planning on taking a job as a Dynamics functional consultant, a Power Platform functional consultant, whatever it is that you're looking for, if that's the job title, regardless of the shopping list of skills that they have in the job advert, you are still a good fit for that role and you should absolutely apply for it. Like, don't rule anything out. Let somebody else do that. Like Femi did an amazing session on how to put a good CV together. He had some fantastic tips in there. Put a good CV together, and like if there is something specific that the company needs that you don't have, then like maybe you don't get an interview. but maybe you do, right? So like always bear in mind, and I can tell you this from my own experience, 25 years of recruiting, you have experience that the company needs and wants. And that experience may not be obvious to you, and it may not be something that's obvious in the job spec that is something that actually the company needs. For example, I've spoken to people who are starting out their career in technology, and they haven't really worked with Power Platform, saying that's the direction that they want to go in, but they don't feel like they have enough experience to get hired. And one of the people I was working with, one of the ladies I was working with, had a massive, she had 10 years finance experience. And I said, I know that you don't see it. And I know it's a bit like when your parents tell you you're beautiful, but like genuinely, there are companies out there that want that experience. They want somebody who understands the functional side of what their customers are doing, because people who are Power Platform solution architects don't necessarily understand what a finance person does. So like, if you've done some Power Platform training, they can train you on the technical stuff. They can absolutely train you on the technical stuff in the same way that you got trained on finance when you took a job in finance, right? So like you bring soft skills, you bring personality, you bring a can-do attitude, you bring your communication skills, and you bring your functional knowledge with you. And the company needs all of those things. Like any company hiring a tech person needs all of those things. They don't just need somebody that does C#. So like, I want you to really take that to heart, that it's like important that you don't think that you're not experienced enough for a role, or that you don't bring something that the company wants, because everybody on this call has some experience, some life experience, some soft skills, some personality traits that companies want to hire. So like, don't rule jobs out, just apply for them. If you don't get an interview, you don't get an interview, so be it, but like, at least give it a go. The second thing in terms of mindset is people have a tendency, in my experience, to go into interviews thinking that they have to impress the people that are interviewing them. And I that you can that's probably a really long discussion. Aside from that, the interview is also, and Femi alluded to this also in what he was saying, the interview also is for you to decide if this company is a fit for you. Like, is this company going to be the kind of place where you will feel comfortable, where you will feel supported? Is this kind of company that is in alignment with your own values, as Femi said? So, the interview is just as much for you to find out about the company and about their values and what kind of people work there, because they're the people you're going to be working with, as it is for them to find out about you. So it's a two-way street. The third point I want to make is, if any of you have ever had a job at any point, as I'm sure you have, you know very well that the job spec and the skills list, the shopping list of skills on that job spec, you didn't have all of those skills on day one. Like on Monday morning, 9 a.m., day one of that job, you didn't have all of those skills. You learn on the job. And very often, if you actually sat down and did a side-by-side comparison of what you actually do versus what was on the job spec you were hired against, I bet you there's very little crossover. So like, it doesn't matter if you don't have every skill on the list, as long as you have the main skill, the main thing, like, you are a functional consultant in Power Platform or Dynamics or whatever it is that you're looking for, or you're a UI UX person, like whatever it is. Understand that no person, even a person who's hired in to a C-suite position, doesn't have 100% of the skills that they need and the knowledge that they need on day one of the job. You learn on the job. So just always have that in the back of your mind. And I alluded to it earlier. The last point is that your soft skills, your personal skills, are just as important. What most companies are looking for when they're looking to hire somebody is not just that you know Power Platform or you know whatever technical skill. They're also looking for, are you the kind of person that can organize yourself? Are you the kind of person that is interested in and can manage people? Can you communicate with people really well? Are you able to negotiate situations with people where maybe somebody wants you to do something that you don't want to do, or somebody wants to do something on a project you're working on that you know is the wrong thing to do? Are you able to manage that situation, negotiate that situation without people getting upset or without it escalating into an argument to get to a good resolution for the project? So and also, like Femi mentioned this in putting these details on your CV, like what you can do as a person and the kind of person you are is just as important, because as I said, they can teach you the technical stuff, they can't teach you how to be you. And like that's essentially, you know, a lot of what a company is hiring. Hopefully that makes sense. So when we start looking at the interview preparation side of things, like you've applied for a job and you've got an interview, and now it's like, oh my god, what am I going to do? how am I going to handle this situation? The first piece of advice I would give you is to find out what the interview process is. The reason this is important is because if there is a 2-stage interview or a 3-stage interview, you want to know about that at the beginning before you have that first interview, because then you know whether or not they're going to make a decision after they've met you once and you're going to meet everybody, or like only if they say, well, it's a 3-stage interview process, we have 2 rounds, we weed people out on the first round, and then we dive into more of their experience on the second round, and only 3 finalists will come back to the third round. So then you know if you've and you also want, sorry, to go back a step, you also want to ask how quickly each round will happen, or how quickly each stage happens. Because if you know after the second interview or after the first interview that you will be notified within 48 hours or within 5 days whether or not you're through to the next round, then if you haven't heard in 5 days, you know that you're not through to the next round. I mean, they should tell you if you haven't made it through to the next round, but like it's easier for you to have that information in your mind as you negotiate through the process. And it's also really useful to ask who you're going to be interviewed by and how they're related to this role. So you may be interviewed by somebody who is like has a sideways relation to this role, as in somebody that would be working alongside you, and you may be interviewed by people that you're reporting into. You may be interviewed by somebody that the person you report into reports into. And having knowledge about who you're going to meet and what their relation is to this role, and if you can find out what types of questions they ask and what answers they like to hear, because that will help you to gear up your questions and answers accordingly for when you actually meet with that person. Plus, if you have that person's name or at least their job title, you can go and look them up on LinkedIn, find out something about them. Research goes a really long way. One of the biggest tips that I would give you is to contact someone in talent acquisition or HR and ask them, you know, what does it take? What kind of people do you hire? Like, what are the things that you look for in people that you're going to hire? Like, if you contacted Femi and said, like, what are you guys looking for to fill this role? What's the kind of person that you're looking for? He'll tell you everything that you need to know in terms of what skills you need to highlight when you go for interview, when you go into that first interview. Like, research with this first interview is absolutely key. If you know who you're meeting, what kind of questions they're going to ask, and what type of person they hire. So for example, to give it some flesh, if you speak to Femi about a position his company is hiring for, and you say, like, who is it that they like to hire, or like, what are the skills that the top 5% people in your organization have, then he might say to you, look, you know, we like people that have done lots of Power Automate stuff, but actually more than that, most of our people work remotely. So we need to see evidence where people are able to self-manage and prioritize their workload correctly, which like is brilliant information that enables you to then highlight when you're having the interview discussion and they're asking you about yourself. You can say, well, look, you know, I'm really good at prioritizing my workload and handling and self-managing. Like, if that's what they're looking for, you can repeat those words directly back to them, and of course straight away it's going to tick a box in their head. And when you're talking to HR or talent acquisition, like, refer to the job specification and ask them, like, you know, are these things important? Which 1, 2, or 3 skills does somebody absolutely have to have? And in what capacity? You know, how are they going to be questioned around that? Like, talent acquisition and HR want to get these roles filled, so they will help you 100%. And then I would look at company info prep. Again, Femi mentioned this earlier, like, go on to LinkedIn, go onto the company website, find out what they do, find out how big they are, their operations. One of the best tips that I always, when I do interview prep for my candidates, I always say, go onto Google and Google the company name and then click on the tab for news. Like, you have like all of them images and everything out, videos, etc. And there is a little tab for news, and you can refine that news down to like the last 24 hours or the last 7 days or whatever. And if there is something in there that's current news, it gives you something to show the interviewer when you talk to them that you've researched the company and you understand a bit about their organization and what's going on with them. And like Femi said, nothing is more pleasing to an interviewer's ear than knowing that a person has done research on the company and they understand about the company and their business. And it's like, in this day and age, it's so easy to do. There is no reason why you wouldn't do it 100%. And I can't tell you the amount of people I've interviewed who haven't done any research on the company at all, which is bananas to me. The next thing we're going to do is prep your answers. So, like, prep your answers for the main skills. If what they're looking for, if what Femi's looking for is someone with a lot of Power Automate, then great. You can list out some examples that you can give where you've done a really great job on Power Automate, or where you've had to solve a really complex problem with Power Automate, or where you were trying to do something in Power Automate and you couldn't do it, and this is how you resolved it. Because showing that you can find an answer to a problem yourself is also a really valuable skill. Like, no, it's bananas to say, but the amount of times I've had people working for me who they've come up against a problem, and so they just haven't done the work. And I say, well, why didn't you do it? And they said, well, I didn't know how to do this. And I said, well, what did you do to find out about it? And like, they just kind of shrug their shoulders. So it's a really valuable skill for you to highlight, to say, look, you know, I was doing this in Power Automate, I couldn't make this work because of X, Y, and Z, and so I went and watched a YouTube video, or I went onto a forum and I asked about it, or I contacted some MVPs on Twitter and found out a way to resolve the problem. So, like, it's very easy to prep up some answers for the interview questions that you'll get asked around the main skills of the job. And also, you can prep some answers for typical interview questions. You may get asked any one of the standard interview questions, like, what's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? How do you prioritize your tasks? And what you can do with those things, like for things like where they ask what your biggest weakness is, turn a negative into a positive. One of my personal biggest weaknesses is I can get too much involved into making something perfect, and I can then miss a deadline because I wanted to make something so good that, like, no one would care it was delivered late, which realistically in a commercial scenario is rarely the case. And what I have learned to do, so the way I answer that question is say, look, I get too much into the weeds. I get too focused on making something perfect. I've recognized that about myself. So what I do is I do an analysis on the task and say, is this a task where it's better to be late and perfect? Or is it a task where done is better than perfect, right? And it has to be done on time. And if it needs some tweaking afterwards, then great. Like, we'll deliver it on time, and then we'll worry about making it perfect later. So that's how you would turn my getting too glued to perfection from a negative trait into a positive trait, right? So, like, if you look up, you can find anywhere on the internet lists of typical, like, generic interview questions. Just have some answers prepared for those, because it looks like you are on top of your game. If somebody says, like, what's your biggest weakness, and you're going, oh, I don't know really, and you have to think about it, as opposed to going, this is what I know I'm not good at, and this is what I do to make sure that's not a problem. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, prep your questions. As I said in the first slide, this is just as much for you as it is for them. So things that are important to you, have them written down as questions. A lot of them will get covered off, sorry, during the process of the interview, but if they do, you can just cross them off. But knowing that you have a list of questions, and when the interviewer says, have you got any questions at the end, if you just go, oh no, it sounds like you haven't prepared and you didn't take the interview seriously. But if you go, oh yes, I've got some questions, some of them we've covered, the ones we haven't covered are, and then you have the opportunity to ask questions. Like if you have somebody that asks no questions versus somebody that's sat down, prepared, organize their questions about their needs and wants, and then like gone through the interview in a methodical process, especially if you're hiring for a tech role, which one of those two candidates looks like they are more interested in the job and a more suitable hire for you. It's always going to be the person that has prepared and has questions. Make sure that you have questions. Don't ask questions about how much holiday you get or when you get your next pay rise, because it creates the sense that actually you're not interested in the company and the content of the job, just the benefits. So have some questions around what the company values are, like if you can find their value proposition or their mission statement, something like that. Then maybe you can ask some questions around that. You can ask about career progression. That is a great question, and I do have a section later for interview questions. You can ask great questions that show that you are invested in being a part of that organization and contributing in terms of value to the company and what they do. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try and speed this up. General prep, if you are going to an we'll just keep going. Awesome. General prep, if you're going for an interview in person, take several copies of your CV. Oh, do we have somebody not on mute? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
trying to
That's
find
okay.
the person. Please
Okay.
crack on. I'll get it.
It's fine. It's gone now, I think. General prep, if you're going for an interview in person, have some extra copies of your CV in case anybody in the interview doesn't have a copy of your CV. Take an A4 book and a couple of pens in case one of your pen doesn't work, or like in case the interviewers don't have a pen. Like nothing makes you look like you're more on top of your game than being able to give the interviewer a pen. Have all of your questions listed down, written in the book, so that they can see you checking off your questions and checking your list as you go through the interview process. I probably don't need to say it, but I will just highlight it. If you are going for an in-person interview, clean shoes, press clothes, take some spares. If you're wearing a white shirt, take a spare. I did have to go to an interview with a coffee stain down my shirt once, and it wasn't a good look. I did get the job, but understand that even if a company is casual or business casual, you should always be dressed as smartly as possible for an interview. You can never be overdressed. Well, you can be overdressed for an interview if you went in like fancy dress or something, but I think you get the point. And if you are going in person, plan your journey, make sure that you know exactly how long it's going to take at the time of day that you're going to be traveling there, and give yourself at least 15 minutes minimum, and 30 minutes is my recommendation. You can always go and grab a coffee somewhere and just chill out and calm down before you go into the interview, rather than arriving 2 minutes before your interview slot feeling really harassed and stressed because you had to rush to get there. It's always better to be early and then grab a coffee or a drink somewhere, not an alcoholic drink, a drink somewhere to calm down and like settle yourself before you go in. And always remember, when it comes to interviews, 15 minutes early is on time is late. If you're doing a video interview, then give some thought to your background, like, have I've run out of time. Have a, what do they call them, filter set up, or make sure that, like, if people can see your background, that it's tidy and it looks professional. I probably don't need to say those things, but I will just mention them. On the day of the interview, as I've said, give yourself plenty of time. Be super nice to everybody. I don't care how rude somebody is to you, just be super nicely awesome to them. I do know companies, bigger organizations, that would have like a mole on reception to see how you interacted with the receptionist, who didn't have a say in whether you were being hired. Or in some companies, the receptionist does have a say in who's being hired. So just be nice to everybody, be polite, be friendly. Don't blag is a, sorry, that's like what do you call it, I've forgotten the word. It's a slang term. To blag is to talk around a subject without actually answering a question. Like if somebody asks you something and you don't know the answer, or you don't know enough detail about the answer, just say you don't know. Like like it's completely fine to say you don't know. If somebody asks you about a technical skill that you don't have or you don't know about, you can be really honest and say, look, I don't have that skill, or I've only done it in X, Y, and Z scenario. However, is it really important that I have that skill as an expert at 9 a.m. Monday morning, day one of the job? Because it's possible I can get up to speed in it, or I can do something to gain that skill before I start the job, or can I partner with somebody when I start who can help me get up to speed on that? Like, just offer solutions, but never say that you can do something that you can't, and don't talk around something that you're unsure about. If you're unsure about it, it's okay to say you're unsure. People will respect that much more, and they can always tell if you're not quite right or not being quite truthful. So if somebody asks you a question and you don't understand it, or you don't understand what they're asking for, clarify the question before you try to answer it. Like, some interviewers who are not very good interviewers may sit down and say, well, tell me about yourself. Like, and people will then start talking about, I'm like, well, I grew up around here, and then I went to school here, and then I went over here to college, and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's, you could be at that for 15 minutes and you'll lose the room. The best thing to do is say, like, what specifically would you like to know? Do you want to know about my career history, or do you want to know about my personal or soft skills? Like, so clarify the question before you answer it, to make sure that you're giving them the information that they actually want for that question. Ask your questions, especially around career progression, and other great questions that you can ask, which are like music to an interviewer's ears, particularly if that person is the hiring manager, is, what can I do in the first 30, 60, 90 days that would have the most impact or add the most value to your team or to your department? Another question that you can ask, which is very similar, is to say, imagine I get hired for the job and it's 1 year from my start date and I'm having a performance review. What would I have done in those 12 months to get like an A plus, to absolutely ace my performance review? What would you want someone in this job to have done to be a really valuable employee? Because then they'll tell you all of the things that you need to do, the things that are most important to them. It gives you an understanding about what the job needs to deliver for the team and for the organization. And another great question that you can ask is, what's the best thing I could do to make your life easier as the manager of this team? Like, what's the one thing that if I could do it and bring it to the team that made your life so much better, what's the one thing you would ask for? Which is really valuable information, because if they say something like, oh, I need help managing people because the team is huge, if you've got management experience, you can go, well, that's great because I've done that here, there, and give them some examples, right? They're absolutely fantastic questions that will give you a lot of insight into the person you're dealing with. And always, always, always close for the next stage. Like, at the end of the interview, when they've asked their questions and you've asked your questions, go straight into, look, I've really enjoyed talking with you today and meeting with you. And hopefully you've enjoyed it too. I'm really interested in your company and in this position. Tell me, do you have any concerns about my ability to do this job? And what that will do is, if they have some concerns about something, then you've got the opportunity to face it head on. If they say, well, you haven't got any C# experience, you can go back to the, look, I don't have it now, but is it reasonable in the month of my notice period or 3 months of my notice period that I can get up to speed to a sufficient level on that skill to be useful for you when I start the job? Or, like, is it essential? Is that an essential skill that I have to have Monday morning, 9 a.m. when I start this job? Because if it is and you don't have it, then you actually already know that you didn't get the job. Like, if that's the one thing that you have to have and you don't have it, then, like, I would rather leave that interview knowing that I'm either through to the next stage or I'm not, and I understand why. So it's a really valuable question to ask. And if they say no, or if you talk about concerns, or they say, no, I don't have any concerns, you say, great. So can I assume then that I'm through to the next stage and I'll get invited back for the next interview? Or if it's a second or third interview, depending on the process, which you will have asked about earlier, and say, great, does that mean that we can move to the next stage? We can move to an offer. Are you considering making me an offer? Like, don't be frightened to close for the next stage, because it's important that the company feels that you want to get this position. That is it, given two candidates with similar-ish skill set, they will give it to the person that asks for it. So always close for the next stage. I'm going to skip past the interview questions because we already did those. Negotiating a salary, this is very difficult for women because I haven't got time to go into all the different reasons, but negotiating a salary doesn't need to be difficult. The key pointers are, if you can possibly avoid naming any kind of number in the interview or in your application process, do. Always avoid it, because as soon as you've said that number, that's the number, or less than that number is what they're going to offer you. Any company that is hiring for a position has a salary frame. Like, they have a budget, they have a salary frame, and they know ahead of interviewing anybody, not just you, how much they're prepared to pay for this job. And they should provide you with that information, right? If they don't, and if it doesn't matter to you, then you can say, or if you want to sidestep the whole thing, if they're asking you about what you're earning now, etc., which is absolutely not relevant to the conversation, what you earn now, unless it's a lot more than they're planning to offer for this job, which you should already know. They should have told you what the job pays. Like, if you want to sidestep the conversation, the best way to do it is to say, look, this interview process is for you to see if you think I can do a good job, and it's for me to see if I think I can do a good job for you. So I would rather focus on that and not get tied up in a conversation about money. If you choose to hire me and move forward with my application, I am certain you will pay me a fair market salary for the job that I'll be doing. And so let's work on that assumption and continue to explore, if we're a fit for each other. Like, nobody can argue with that. Like, literally nobody can argue with that. And presumably the job is advertised with a salary. So if it's way less than you're prepared to accept, then presumably you wouldn't have applied for it. So they need to make you an offer. Like, some companies will say, well, like, we might be interested in you. How much money do you want? Like, don't get drawn into that. Like, it's really difficult as women not to get drawn into that, because you feel like if you don't give them an answer, that they're just going to discount you. The only reason someone would ask that question is if they think that they can get you for less money than they were planning to pay for this salary. And just refer back to I'm sure you're paying fair market salary for the job that you're expecting someone to do. So I'm assuming that you have a salary range in mind. So I would presume that you're going to make an offer in line with that, right? So, like, they need to make you an offer. You don't need to tell them what they need to pay you, unless you're like, a CEO, and you have a massive package and you have to say to them, look, I will come and work for you, but this is what you're gonna have to pay me. It's a different conversation then. But like, earlier on in your career, let them make you an offer. If they make you an offer and it's too low, have a human conversation to say, look, I'm really interested in your company, I'm really interested in this job, but the situation I have is I've got like bills and rent or mortgage to pay, and I have living expenses, and I can't accept something less than X. Is there anything that we can do to make it work, right? So, like, they can either come up with more money. If they absolutely can't, can they do something else? Is there something along the lines of a sign-on bonus or any other kind of bonus? Can they give you can they pay for your childcare? Can they give you health insurance? Can they give you a car? Like, is there a petrol allowance? Is there something else that makes that offer work for you? Like, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to have that conversation. So we just came back round probably about 5 minutes over time. I'm so sorry. Remember, you're being interviewed because you have the needed skills or experience that that company wants. Do your research, know who you're going to meet, know how you're going to handle the questions, know what questions you're going to ask. Like, nothing will give you more confidence than knowing you're going into that meeting 100% as prepared as you can be. When you go to the interview, make sure you cover everything that you need. It's not just about them. Like, if there's questions that are important to you, such as, I need to have every Tuesday afternoon off because I have an elderly relative that I have to go and take to whatever appointment. Like, if that's something that's important to you, then you have to cover it. Like, if you can't take a job without that concession, then you need to have asked that question. And negotiations, you should know ahead of going for an interview what the salary on offer is. Don't make a mistake. Don't name a number when you're in an interview or an application process, because you'll get stuck at that. Like, and it's a nightmare. I think we're doing questions at the end, so I will whiz by that. If you have your phone ready, you can contact me on Twitter, although I think my contacts are probably in the chat. Or you can contact me on LinkedIn, connect with me if you want to ask me something on message because you don't want to do it publicly. I mean, people will learn from you asking the question publicly, but if you really don't want to, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. And thank you and good luck. And I'm sorry I ran over. I do my best not to, but I am a talker. Sorry.
Not at all. Not at all. We enjoyed the session so much. Like I was
Awesome.
listening. I totally forgot to paste to post your LinkedIn handle. I'm like, oh
That's
my god, I
okay.
haven't done that yet.
It's
But it's there
fine.
now.
It's
Please
fine.
follow Alison. She has amazing experience. I'm sure you can all agree. Like honestly, I've been in the industry for a while, and there's a lot of insights I've gotten from this. Like a lot of times, especially the question part. I've not done too many interviews, but the few ones, I'm like, what exactly should I even ask? What's the right question? What's the right,
Yeah.
and then what you're saying about pushing back a bit. Sometimes we feel it's not ethical when you're asked the question, you have to answer, even if it's uncomfortable for you. So this was really helpful to, to hear this, to say, you can also control, you can have control over the interview because it's your interview as well.
It's your
Yeah.
interview, right? 100%. That's what I should have said. That's the way I should have said it. It's your interview as well. So it's super important that you feel like you have some element of control. You're not just sitting there being grilled by a panel of
Yeah.
people, right? Yeah.
And it projects confidence. People want to employ people who are confident, so that it would also let them know that yes, you're confident and you're not desperate, which is also a good thing because life is so
Right.
funny. When you're
Right.
desperate, they don't want you. When you're not desperate, they want you. So
It's like men.
yeah.
Or
Amazing. Thank you
women
so
if
much.
you're that way.
So we'll just quickly rush through our announcements and then we'll turn off the recording and take the questions. Yes, Modupe, I see your hand has been up. Just give us 5 minutes to whistle through our announcements. MJ, do you have the slide? Or just quickly, so while MJ is getting the slide, want to say a big thank you again to our mentors. We want to let you know that the certificates for everyone who attended all of our sessions will be out to you by Victoria tells me tomorrow. Thank you so much, Victoria. Certificates will be sent out tomorrow and it's going to look so beautiful. You can see the image on the right. So a great thank you and well done to Victoria and the team for putting together this lovely certificate of participation, to all our mentees and students who took part in the Tech Stylers Deep Dive. So that's it. And then next month is our anniversary. We're going to turn 3 years old. It's so beautiful to see. We just started. It looked like just yesterday, and today Textiles is going to be 3. So we'll be celebrating this in the month of June. You're all invited to join us. Same time, 6 p.m. last Saturday of the month, which is 24th of June. And we'll be delighted to have you all. We hope to have some of our students showcase what they've done during the deep dive session, and also we want to bring a few other special guest speakers to us for that session. So stay tuned, follow our handles, so you know when the announcements are out. I think that's all. So let's I'll stop the recording now. MJ, is there any other thing on the slide? I don't think so. Questions and answers. Okay, so let's stop recording.
Not at all.
All right, great. Stop recording.